This is the Voice of Charleston Women Podcast, where you can meet like-minded, strong, independent, professional, and inspiring local women. Connect, learn, grow. Let's all support each other as we rise together. This is Voice of Charleston Women.
I'm Erin Kienzle, your host for the Voice of Charleston Women, and I am thrilled for our next guest in this interview because this is something that has been a long time coming to Charleston. We're going to talk about the International African American Museum. Is expected to open its doors next year in 2022. And right now we have the assistant curator joining us, Martina Morale. Martina, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
No problem. I'm well. I'm glad to be here.
Yes. I was telling you before we started, I feel like I have been talking about this museum forever. Like Mayor Joe Riley a long time ago when it was just a seed of an idea. So we are so excited that this is happening and it's going to open next year. Where to start? You're the assistant curator. You moved here for this job, kicked it off in Charleston. Just kind of give me an update. Where do things stand right now?
So right now we are working as an exhibition team, hard at work to kind of refine the exhibitions. We have 7 galleries that will be opening in addition to our Center for Family History, which also has some exhibits within its space. So we've got plenty to do as a team. We're working on building a small object and artifact collection. We're working on kind of the content for the exhibition. So, the museum labels and all of that good stuff. We also, of course, have the memorial gardens that will be below the building. And those are in full swing in terms of development, and there'll be content in that area as well. So we've got a lot of things going on. We're super excited, but we're also, we got work to do. So
You have a lot of work to do, that's for sure. For the listeners, I know it's downtown by the water, correct? Describe the spot because it's a very special spot.
Right. So the museum stands on the area believed to have been where Gadsden's Wharf was. So Gadsden's Wharf, of course, was one of the places where African captives arrived when they first arrived in North America. So many African captives came through this wharf. There was a warehouse as well on the property that housed these captives until they were, of course, sold into slavery, into enslavement. And so the Memorial Garden is really the space where we honor those. There was a particularly cold winter one year, and a large amount of them passed away in these horrific conditions inside of these warehouses. So we want to make sure we honor our ancestors and the memories of them kind of within that garden space. So that's got its own kind of interpretive space. And then, of course, we have our exhibitions above the gardens that tell the story of the African diaspora and the people of African descent across the world. So we're focused, of course, on the Low Country, but we also have spaces that tell the story of West Central Africa, as well as kind of the arrival here in Charleston and how that changed the lives of these African captives and eventually creates this new ethnicity of people, right? African Americans. So.
Right. I think we're excited to have it in Charleston, but sometimes we might lose sight that this could be an international destination. I mean, where else in the world do we have something like this? Like, I foresee people from all over coming to see the museum. You think so?
Of course. I think the international aspect of our museum gives us a little bit of a different spin than, say, your kind of national scope museum. So we have partnerships with people in Sierra Leone, and well, hopefully they'll be able to open some interpretive sites in the future as well that kind of connect these areas, because, of course, the captives came from the continent of Africa to, North America. And so that journey, all of that will be talked about within our exhibition spaces and kind of gives it an international scope in terms of visitors and museum goers.
Right. Can you kind of give me a walkthrough verbally? I know with the different exhibits, you mentioned the gardens outside, but when we enter those doors, what is it going to be like? When we take our children there, what will it be like to walk through?
So when you enter the museum, you'll be entering kind of up some steps into or an elevator to the center of the museum. There'll be a space there for purchasing your tickets, and there'll be a small cafe and kind of a museum shop. And then from there, you kind of have the option. We'll be directing people to go towards the exhibition spaces, but on your on the other side of the building will be the Center for Family History. So you kind of have options there, but there are 7 gallery spaces facing towards the water, right? So the east side of the building. And then the west side of the building houses the Center for Family History. So within those 7 galleries, we talk, like I said, about West and West Central Africa. We talk about the Low Country. We talk about, we have an orientation film that kind of gives you an idea of what you're going to kind of see and experience while you're there. And of course, you'll see faces of the African diaspora, really what that means. These kind of cultural shifts and changes that people of African descent brought to these different places across the world. So there'll be a lot of space for interaction. So we'll have some interactive, some technological interactives, but also some hands-on activities. So things, to touch and feel. And of course, that will look different in COVID. And so we're making some kind of alterations based on that as well. So
hopefully
also be,
in 2022, we don't need to worry about that as much, right? Hopefully things will improve.
Right. Hopefully.
Yeah.
But I think, with anything you're touching and feeling.
Right. Just smart to be safe. Absolutely. You mentioned the Family History Center. Is that where somewhere, like, is it computers where people can go and do research? How does that work?
So the director of our Center for Family History, Tony, she's well-versed in helping African Americans trace their ancestry.
Right.
So she's been doing this work for, over 20 years. And so you will be able to go into the space and kind of get tips on how to kind of search your ancestry. You can also use computers. There'll be some museum staff that can help you as well, kind of start that journey. So it's a little bit of a research library, but also, like I said, there'll be some exhibitions that tell different stories of people who have been able to trace their ancestry as far back as kind of you can get as a African American in this country.
What you have described so much, and it all sounds wonderful. What do you think is going to be the best part? Like, if you walk into the International African American Museum and you leave with one takeaway or one thing that you'll always remember, what do you think that'll be?
I think that the overall goal is for people to kind of understand the story of people of African descent across the world. So the impact that people have made worldwide. So culturally, spiritually, politically, I think there's so much. This is not a museum about enslavement. This is a museum about, people of African descent and the impact they've made on the world. And of course, slavery is a part of that story, but it's not the whole story.
Right. That's a great point that you bring that up. Your role in all of this, I want you to talk a little bit about your history, because you have worked in Georgia, you've been in Texas, like you have a very impressive resume. What kind of led down this path, if you will, to end up where you are now?
Well, I started out 16, starting college as I didn't know what I wanted to major in, and ended up going to Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina. And so I graduated in 2004, so long ago, with a bachelor's degree in history, not really sure where to go from there. Spent some time in Salt Lake City actually working in software development. Then I wanted to go back and get my master's, so I did that in Houston, Texas at the University of St. Thomas. From there, I taught in the community college system in Houston. Enjoyed it so much, but really, I kind of wanted to shift into museum work because I kind of felt like I was forcing the history on people. And I thought, well, museum goers volunteer for the education, right? So I looked into museum studies programs. Of course, I already had a graduate degree, so I didn't want to get a second graduate degree. So I ended up going to the University of West Georgia in Carrollton, Georgia, and doing 30 hours in museum studies and public history. And immediately, before I even finished my last semester, I got the position at the Atlanta History Museum, working on their cyclorama exhibition, which was reinterpreting this Confederate monument. And a locomotion exhibit was part of that story as well. So I did that for 18 months, and I knew, the whole time this museum was coming to Charleston. My partner was already living. He's from Charleston, been here all his life. So I knew I wanted to go to Charleston, and I just knew this was the job for me. So I moved here on faith after my position ended in Atlanta, and got the position in September of 2019, and been here ever since. So.
And here you are. It sounds like the perfect and the dream job for you. How does a typical day go for you? It sounds like you're doing so much research, so much preparation. Kind of walk me through what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, because you guys have a ton of work, as you said, before 2022 to open these doors.
So we're kind of working on a divide and conquer path right now. We got some deadlines to meet. So right now I'm focused on object acquisition. And so that means purchases for our collection. I'm also, going back and forth with people who want to donate objects to the museum. And then I also do work with the design firm on image acquisition. So kind of the aesthetic part of the exhibition spaces, looking at those images saying yes, no, maybe so. So do a lot of that work. But I also do research, of course, for objects and what can fit in what gallery and kind of what helps us tell that story without using words, right? So any given day, I could be bidding in an auction, and then later I'm making purchases online, and then I'm talking to donors. So just a lot of different kind of things on a daily basis. But it's exciting to kind of see our collection build, and we're building what we call a display collection. So we're only soliciting items for our permanent exhibitions right now. And so that's kind of our scope.
Right. But I'm also an auctioneer, so it's fascinating to me that you're bidding on items. How do you decide that this item, whatever it may be, is museum worthy? Like, do you track stuff, or you have lists of items that you feel that would complete the museum that you need?
So we started with a list of kind of the ideal objects. Of course, we're on a tight timeline, so we don't have time to wait for things to kind of hit the market or wait for things to show up. So sometimes we have to kind of think outside the box, so to speak. So, sometimes we'll buy something online and maybe it's not the exact thing, but it helps tell that story in a way that's interesting and unique. And so we do, it depends on the object, how much we're, willing to invest in terms of auctions and things like that. But we also get some great donations. So we get some great kind of free stuff that people really want to give to us. And our hope is that we can use these items for the life of these exhibitions. And then we'll, rethink things after when we change things up in a few years.
Right. What is the coolest thing you have? Is there one item that just excites you that you were like, yes, I can't believe we got this?
So we just recently, in an auction, were able to acquire a Buffalo Soldier uniform. And so it's exciting because it's that one piece we needed to kind of fill one case that we had some smaller things related to the Buffalo Soldiers, but we got this great uniform in beautiful condition. And so I'm excited to kind of see it come to Charleston, and we'll put it in storage for now, and then we'll display it for opening.
Well, that leads me to my next question. Where is everything right now? It's, as they're still constructing what you guys, it's got to be also massive, cataloging and making sure everything's organized as it comes in, right?
Right. So we have a wonderful registrar, Suzanne DeBella, and so she's doing that work. And we actually have a partnership with the Warren Lash Center in North Charleston, and they are going to be our collection storage site. And so that's where everything's going. And Suzanne does a great job of doing all that logistical stuff. I get to pick the fun things and buy them, and then she gets to do the paperwork.
It sounds like you get the better end of the deal, just in my opinion.
I think she enjoys her side.
Her work.
Yes.
You told me you have a new baby. I can hear the sweet baby in the background. What do you hope that your children will learn when someday, as a school class, they go to this museum, or you take them, or even my children that are older? What do you want them to learn when they visit?
Well, I think, everyone's going to have a unique experience, right? Because it's framed by your social life, your political life, your ethnicity, right? So for my son, of course, he's a young Black man. So I hope that he kind of comes away knowing that, there's this wonderful history and this wonderful story that includes slavery, as I said, but it's not the only part of that story, and that he's proud of who he is. And that he knows that his impact on the world matters.
Right. Very poignant, thoughtfully said. 2020, as we know, was a rough year. Do you hope that, I know I certainly hope this, that my children in visiting the museum someday are raised better and more open and more understanding, that we are creating a better generation and the museum's going to be a part of it. Do you believe that?
Absolutely. I think, the more you know, the more informed you are, the better decisions you make.
Right. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Do you have any pieces of advice or any takeaways? I know you mentioned before about, reaching your goals. You've taken kind of a meandering path, but now it seems as if you have the perfect job for you. What would you say to someone listening if they haven't quite found it yet? What inspiration would you give them?
I think that you can always make something it for the time. So I think finding your niche in whatever it is you're doing. I've had, like I said, I was reinterpreting a Confederate monument, which wasn't exactly my thing, but I figured out where I fit into the story and how to help tell that story. So I think, just finding your place where you are.
Where do we go for more information? Can we sign up for updates on the museum? We want to be there the day the doors open. Where do we go?
So if you go to our website, iaamuseum.org, you can sign up for our newsletter and get more information, and that'll tell you the story. The building's there and it's beautiful, and we're still a work in progress, but we're excited.
You keep working away. We are grateful for your time today.
Thank you.
All right, and you've been listening to Martina Morale, the Assistant Curator of the International African American Museum. This is the Voice of Charleston Women.
Thanks for spending time with Voice of Charleston Women Podcast. Please like us and follow us on whatever platform you're using to access Voice of Charleston Women.